We're rolling.
We're rolling? Oh, good. What are we rolling, Isaac?
We're rolling.
On what?
Tape. Digital audio tape. DAT.
Yeah, but what are we doing?
This is a little thing we like to do once a year, if that.
Yeah?
A little project, if you will, titled Background Noise.
We're doing it again, baby!
Season 3 is...
Season 13.
Season 3 is going to be amazing.
The show... We are like the Terrence Malick of podcasts.
Yeah?
I think we actually have made as many episodes of the show as Terrence Malick has made movies. Which is not many.
A high number.
That's not a high number. How it's been a while since we've done this, folks. How present is the audio of the film?
Hold for a second.
Oh, wow.
It's low.
It's low?
It's low.
But you can hear it.
It's the background noise, I would say.
Yeah, the background noise is the background noise.
Yeah. We're the primary audio source, but it's there.
Okay. Well...
I can hear the music.
So we're watching Contempt today.
Yeah.
Jean-Luc Godard's 1963 classic.
I'm trying not to take that as a subliminal message. And of all the films, you selected one titled Contempt.
That's right.
I hope that there's not something you're trying to say with it.
Not to you specifically. I do have contempt for women.
Let's start there, Fabrizio.
No, not as much as I used to.
Not as much as I used to.
I'm sure if we were to go back to the very first episode, my misogyny would be much more pronounced.
That's a good question. I guess we'll have to review.
We'll have to ask Tommy.
Since
he's the only one who really watched
through the archive.
Who listens to this. What are you doing?
I'm adjusting the levels.
Okay.
Because your loud voice wants to clip out on this thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I can lower the voice.
No, I want to adjust to you. I want you to be comfortable, Fabrizio.
I'm comfortable no matter what.
Don't want the technology getting in the way.
So Tommy texted us recently saying that he had been listening to earlier episodes of this show.
Yes.
Of whatever you want to call this thing. And he talked about how in the first episode I brought up my hatred, one could say my contempt, of Godard.
Yeah, you're right.
And we've come full circle.
Look how full circle
as I've now watched just about every single Godard film, save one, and we'll get to that. But he's now, I think, one of my favorite filmmakers.
Have you not seen Goodbye to Language?
I've seen it, but not in its proper format.
I see.
And so that's something we should talk about.
Let's go.
So we'd start by saying that So Godard died last year, September 13th, I think. It was the exact date.
Good memory.
Well,
I wonder why you remember that date.
This is a wonderful scene, of course. So, as I understand, the story behind this scene is basically just that he got Brigitte Bardot, who's the star, the woman in the scene,
right?
And she was pretty much like a sex icon of France in the '60s, and so they were like, this is a fine movie and all, but Brigitte Bardot's not naked in any scene. And we kind of, if you're gonna have Bardot in a movie, she kind of needs to be naked.
Sure, that was kind of a waste.
And then Godard was like, okay, what would be an actual appropriate scene where it would make sense that she's naked? Oh, she's in bed with her lover.
People are often naked in that situation. Not me. I don't care for that.
You see, I'm very Catholic as well when it comes to stuff like that. I have a full long sleeve shirt when I'm making love.
Absolutely. Just tear enough of a space.
Right. I wear my trunks in the shower. Thank you very much.
Winnie the Pooh style.
I haven't seen my naked body in years. Who knows what's going on?
Just as God intended.
Absolutely. Yeah. He doesn't want me to see myself.
No.
Although, actually, if one were to interpret the Bible in a certain way, one could say that when man ate the forbidden fruit and gained a certain self-awareness,
right,
that ruined the Garden of Eden.
That's right.
So if anything, we have to go back to a time when we were all so innocent.
Well, first we need to get rid of shame, and that's
and then we'd also have to get rid of sexuality, I guess.
Yeah, that's not happening anytime soon. Actually, I disagree with that particular sentiment. I think a lot of people incorrectly conflate the embarrassment over the nakedness with a sexual element, where technically the first command that God ever gives to humankind is to go get it on.
Yeah, go forth and multiply.
Exactly. So sex has been there from day one.
Yeah, but sexiness is a different thing.
All right.
Sex as a thing to do versus sexuality being an element of one's...
Well, isn't clothing the thing that makes it sexy, though?
I guess that's true, yeah.
The thing that once you're trying to hide it, it becomes a desirable thing.
Yes, but they were naked in the Garden of Eden.
Exactly. And there wasn't
So shame creates sexuality. So if anything, what makes sex so good is the shame element.
Right.
All right, then.
And that's why arguably I think, lingerie is more attractive than just the naked body.
Right. I don't know.
There's something to hide.
Here we go. Here we go. Let's go. Let's zoom in.
Let's get a nice close shot on the naked body.
She asked him, "Do I have a nice buttock?" She asked her husband, "Do you think I have a nice buttock?" I think he said, "Yes, I think you do."
He's like, it's all right.
This is a lovely scene, actually, if in context.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Oh, it's very lovely.
Context is not something we often get here on Background Noise.
This is true. I mean, the thing is, the way we thought up the show so many years ago was, what if we did like DVD commentary tracks for movies, but the thing is, more often than not, we have nothing to say about the movie. We're just talking.
Well, I thought that was the point as to why it's called Background Noise, just because we put on a movie and talk about everything but the movie.
I guess in theory, if we actually had things to say about the movie that were interesting, it would still be background noise. One could just choose to listen to the interesting facts.
That's true. I think a big facet of that, though, is it's hard for me to give any colorful commentary as a person watching most of these films for the first time. All I can kind of say is, like, oh, that looks nice. Oh, look at that. That's a nice shot.
That is true. We do tend to watch films you haven't seen.
This is true. Which works well for the format, frankly.
Seems to. We need to, when I do this, it shows up in the...
Yeah, it's actually kind of a nice sound, though. We're drinking for the first time.
We're drinking Bacardi Superior Rum.
Is that what we're drinking right now?
Well, yeah. We can always switch to the Hornitos whenever you want, but we're doing Bacardi at the moment.
We'd have to break the seal.
Not a problem. He gave it to us to break.
No, I understand. I'm just saying there's a whole extra step involved.
We could make that...
I'm going to try.
Maybe that's an ASMR thing.
My glass. It's nice. It's a nice sound.
Yeah? It's some ASMR thing going on.
Yeah, it's pleasant.
So the plot of Contempt, if we want to just give some context for this film, which is a great film. I genuinely think it's one of my favorite Godard films. Certainly as far as the early period goes, because he has different periods, of course.
What year is this film?
63?
Okay.
63. So Godard was actually quite prolific, for those of us who don't know, which is not many of us.
Even I knew that, but only secondhand.
Yeah, he's quite prolific in that those first, let's say, 10 years, he was really more like 7. Those first 7 years he directs movies, he essentially shoots 14 movies.
That's
it's like on average 2 movies a year, yeah.
Quite prolific, yeah.
He shot 2 films back to back on at the simultaneously, 2 or 3 Things I Know About Her and Made in the USA. He would just shoot one in the morning and shoot the other in the afternoon. It was
something to strive for.
Something to strive for, indeed. Especially when you look at the movies and you think, this doesn't look bad, does it? It looks professional.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah, this is one of his most visually beautiful movies. He's shooting it in widescreen CinemaScope. I believe it's CinemaScope.
This derelict Teatro 6 is a gorgeous background for whatever's happening.
So the plot of this movie is Michel Piccoli and Brigitte Bardot are a married couple.
Okay.
And Piccoli is a writer. I think his name is something like Paul. It's for some reason all of Jean-Luc's leading men, their names are Paul. I'm not sure why. And then in one movie, Karina, the last he does with her name is Paulette. Something about the name. It's almost usually when there's a Paul, it's a stand-in for Jean-Luc. I'm not sure why. I think Richard Brody would know more than I would. It's been a while since I read that book.
All right.
But so in the movie, he's a screenwriter, and he gets hired by this American producer who's played by Jack Palance, the great Jack Palance, most well known to some of us as Curly from City Slickers.
Sure.
I know you know that movie.
I do know that movie.
So you know Curly.
I also know the sequel with Curly's Gold.
Yeah, Curly's Gold. Well, he's not in that movie, though.
No.
Because he's dead.
He's dead.
They're looking for his gold.
Yeah. Well, doesn't he have like a twin brother or something in it then?
Oh, does he?
I think so. I think that's one of the twists.
That's how they get Jack Palance to appear again.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't make a sequel without Jack Palance.
Apparently, but you can make it without Curly, the iconic character. But anyway, so he's an American producer, and he tells Paul, "Hey, we're working on this movie, and the script isn't good.
It means more sex, is what I just saw come across the screen.
Basically, we need you to sex it up. Can you work on the script for a while?" And the whole movie is him saying him to Paul, "Are you going to work on this film, or do you want to sign a handshake, or we sign the contract?" And the film in question is an adaptation of, I think, The Odyssey, being directed by a real life German filmmaker, Fritz Lang. Who appears in the film as himself.
Oh, he's in it.
Yes,
that's fun.
It's a fun cast for a movie.
Fritz Lang, who we know from M, and Metropolis, the other M,
and Manhunt,
the third M, The Man Loves M's.
That's a good letter.
It is a good letter.
You look at the letter M, and it is quite menacing.
Yeah,
it's got kind of horns to it.
Yeah,
it's a violent letter.
Absolutely,
which makes it sexual.
Mephistopheles,
which makes it alluring.
McDonald's,
sex and violence
and
go hand in hand, and the letter M. Yes. Menstruation.
That's another one.
The most feminine of acts.
That's another one.
In fact, Well, I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
You see, what we just witnessed there was me.
That's growth.
Not
That's evolution.
was growth. Me saying, you know what, I don't need to say that.
You
out
compare
loud.
that to the first episode, and yeah.
One could argue that that's worse, though, that I have added a filter in my life. One could argue that it makes me less of a man or less of me.
Sure.
But then again,
but there are others who argue that's not a bad thing.
Are those people in the room right now?
No comment.
So, when one looks at the scope of time.
Yes.
We'll get back to Godard in a second.
Yeah.
When one
Let's
looks
look
at
the scope of time
when
first.
one thinks about one's life and how one evolves or changes, I forget which Greek philosopher it was. It was a pre-Socratic one, I believe, who held the theory that all the world, which is held together by atoms, is constantly in motion and yet never changes at the same time.
Okay.
Basically, one could say it's the well, that's a lovely sound for the.
It's a furnace.
It's a furnace. But of sexual pent-up frustration, maybe, much like in the film. Now, one looks at the scope of time, and one could say that one changes throughout one's life, but in fact one never changes, because a person is not any one moment in their life. They are the collection of...
collective experience.
The line of time that is your life, that is who you are. And it's not until you're at your deathbed that you realize, you look at your life and realize that's who I was. One can never know oneself until one has hit the complete, the full picture of it.
It's a very mathematical interpretation of a life.
I don't know that it is. I think it's much like cinema, right?
Explain.
Movies begin, and you don't really know what it is you're watching. You watch them, you experience it. You don't really know what it is that you're watching until it's over. When it's over, you go, I now understand this film. Much like people.
I don't know that I agree with that comment.
Well, you're a bitch. Now, there's Fritz Lang in his chair.
You can tell by the
monocle.
The one eye.
Yeah, well, yeah, the one good eye. The monocle. He's like He's the Columbo of German expressionism.
That's right.
So yeah, this is very Godardian stuff. So they're showing footage of his film, of his adaptation of the Odyssey, and there's in many Godard films there's always a lot of references to things. So the music that alludes to other music, or the dialogue, which is, especially in his later films in his second period. By the time we get to, say, Nouvelle Vague, the film in 1990, that's the first film where every single piece of dialogue is actually just a quote from something else. People are speaking in quotations in his films oftentimes. In his earlier films, there's actually some semblance of ordinary dialogue. People are talking like people. But there still is obviously a large references to other films or to literature, poetry, and so we see similar things going on here right now.
There's a film called Nouvelle Vague.
Yes.
Which translates
to the New Wave. Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Funny.
In 1990.
Is this after the term was coined for...
Oh, absolutely. The Nouvelle Vague was coined in the 60s.
Well,
it was a contemporary term. It was a new wave. I think it was probably by the time of this film premiering at Cannes in 1960, I want to say, there were people were talking about the Nouvelle Vague, the new wave of French filmmakers.
Right. Interesting.
Yes. So it's a good movie. We can talk about Godard in general. So Godard died September 13th, 2022. And it was not until after his death that I was able to watch his movies and appreciate what they were. And I do suspect a certain spiritual element.
Well, it was a very sudden change. Like, you went from literally the day before having next to no interest to the following day
where all of a sudden I could watch them.
Veracity.
Yes. I had to consume
hunger.
Them. Yes.
For his work.
It's been a rough couple of years for me as a man.
Let's elaborate on that.
There's not much more I want to say other than it's been a rough couple of years,
and
I think as a man specifically, yes, and I think that a lot of the events of my life have probably altered me in some way. Right? I think it was. What are you doing?
I'm giving you some relevant.
Relevant
context.
He wondered how he kept getting in these situations. I was just handed a cigar box or a matchbook. A matchbook, yes. That says on the front. He wondered how he kept getting in these situations with a cat in a basket holding a liquor bottle of some kind.
I assume it's liquor. Yeah.
And I'm the cat.
You're the cat in
this situation.
Scenario,
yeah.
That's my presumption.
You're probably correct. And so I keep getting in these situations to this day. But I started watching Godard films after he died as a lark, really, because I thought, well, I should give him another shot.
Might as well try.
And I think it was I saw A Weekend, which was, I didn't love it, but I thought it was good. And I was like, okay, there's parts of this that are interesting. There's a wonderful, not a non-sex scene in that film. that's what I'm going to call it. So a man and a woman or a couple are talking about. The woman is describing this really long dream she has, and it's very erotic, almost comically erotic. And I thought this is actually very sexy, especially for a Godard film. So that was that. But I saw Weekend, and then I saw Forever Mozart, which is the title is a pun. But and that I thought was actually very good, and I thought, oh, this is a very good Godard film.
Had you tried any of the films that you introed in before his death? Like, had you
Did I
seen either of
rewatch?
those movies before?
Are you asking me which ones of his I've seen before, or did I rewatch the ones I'd seen?
Yes,
before?
that's what I'm asking.
I did eventually, and I did like them much more. I saw Breathless again much later.
Do you think that that's a part of it, is that you started with different films, or you think it was just the cosmic shift in your life?
Absolutely. I think it was the cosmic thing.
Beautiful.
I think if I'd seen any of those films, I would have hated them. I think now I love them.
It's truly fascinating.
Yes.
Turn of events.
One could say I am schizophrenic.
Godard's spirit, as it left his body, somehow tore through your chest.
Yeah. Yes. I was in the middle of coitus when he died.
That's right. That's a big part of it.
To the minute when he died.
I still am unclear on how you can be certain of.
He has an official time of death.
I'm curious as to how you were tracking your time.
I have a very good memory for these things.
In the boudoir.
I have a very good memory for these things.
All right.
Especially when one's in the middle of it, you don't forget the time.
I can't say I've ever checked my watch in the middle.
Well, then you haven't lived. I have other places to go, people to see.
Gotta wrap this up pretty soon here, or else I'll never make it.
I'm so bad at lighting matches.
Yeah, do you break that one? Oh, there you go. That's some ASMR. That's nice. I don't think that it is strong enough. Look at that.
Ah!
And you've just ruined a perfectly good little glass of Bacardi.
No, I can take the match out.
You've smoked it up.
How did that sound, actually?
It sounded quite nice. That's some good ASMR.
I might do it again.
Maybe you will.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't. So basically, I got into Godard.
Is this film?
This was shot in Italy.
Gorgeous.
I think this was shot. Actually, it might have been in Spain. No, it was shot in Italy. This entire location, I wish I could recall. I can look this up.
Yeah,
actually.
this is
definitely. I think this might actually be on one of the islands.
It's convincing me that I need to go to wherever that is. It's beautiful with the cliffs and the blue water.
Yeah, that's a big. So the point.
But that's a film within a film. That's some.
No, that was
Odyssey
that
film?
was. But they do go to that location in the film because that's Fritz Lang has in the movie has a house there. He was shooting it pretty much at his house.
I see
that stuff. Oh, I love the scene. Jack Palance is really upset. They're talking about, oh, that was actually quite beautiful what you were trying to do, but Jack Palance gets really upset. That's not the script that we agreed on. Here it goes. That's not what is in that script, Fritz. Actually, I should turn on subtitles. I'm surprised they're not on.
They've been coming on when they speak French.
Oh, I see. It's one of those things.
It's one of those, exactly.
I hate that. To me, you got to go the full Monty with subtitles. You either put the subtitles on or you don't. But that's just me. But yeah, so the general plot of this film, as I said, he's hired on to shoot the script, but also what if the title Contempt comes from the fact that the married couple, is basically almost very arbitrarily after a certain scene in the film, they clearly hate each other now.
Okay. Arbitrary, you say?
Well, it's not arbitrary. The movie hints at ideas, but basically it seems like from one scene to the next, they no longer love each other. And then the movie explores that kind of relationship and what happened and why. And really the movie is, people considered it to be a kind of, metaphor is not the right word, but he was pretty much talking about his marriage to Anna Karina. Okay. Anna Karina. They had been married for a couple of years at this point, and their love was on the rocks.
I see.
And that's, I think, another thing I really took out of, especially the early ones. The later ones are a little different, but the early ones, you kind of get the sense that they're working at multiple levels. He's telling, Godard, the way you realize it, when you realize it makes sense that he shot movies the way he thought, right? And so oftentimes he would show up the day of and write the dialogues for that day. Or he would tell the actor, he wouldn't have a script, he would tell the actor of the day, say this stuff. And he would, to the camera, just say that. And that's how he would shoot those, especially the early ones. Like the first time we see Karina and Le Petit Soldat, it's very much his, there's a scene where she's in an apartment and the camera's just on her. and she's just talking to the other character who's off screen, and you can tell she's talking to Godard. They're just talking, and he's recording it, and then kind of overdubbing the other part of the dialogue later, and you realize that he's putting himself in his movies in a way where it's the movies are like his thoughts, his thought process,
almost a journaling process.
Exactly, regardless of what the plot of his films are, because the other ones are all kind of genre pictures technically, but it doesn't matter. He still inserts his own ideas in them in ways that are interesting and inspired. And in this movie, it's him talking about his marriage, even though it's a plot about a screenwriter and a movie on the Fritz. On the Fritz. Godard likes his puns too. I don't know if you know that. He loves his puns. But and then the movies, when you realize that level of them, they become much better to watch because you're not really watching a movie so much as you're watching someone deal with whatever they're dealing with.
So again, I'm curious.
In movie form,
was that lost on you in early viewing?
No,
you felt, or like you just didn't.
I don't think I could connect with it because I hadn't been through enough.
I see.
I hadn't been through enough in life to really relate to that. My left leg is falling asleep. I don't know why that is.
Move it around.
I am doing that now.
Good man.
So let's find out exactly where that location is.
I'm curious.
Filming took place in Cinecittà, which we saw, the studio, and the Casa Malaparte on Capri Island. Capri Island. So that's where all that stuff is done. Oh, it even says here I'm reading from Wikipedia right now, so it's not, it's a reliable enough source for this stuff, but it says in one paragraph, Godard admitted his tendency to get actors to improvise dialogue during the peak moment of creation often baffled them. They often feel useless, he said, yet they bring me a lot. I need them, just as I need the pulse and colors of real settings for atmosphere and creation. So yes, he would oftentimes improvise dialogue on the spot with his actors. He wouldn't, he wouldn't, and there would be, especially on Breathless, his first film, there were days where he would just show up and he's like, I got nothing. Let's just not shoot today. And they wouldn't shoot anything that day. That's the way Godard works.
That's a challenging way to work.
Yeah.
If you're not Godard.
Again, some people would call that pretentious to a certain degree. They wouldn't necessarily...
Precious is the word that I would use.
I don't think it's precious at all.
That's a very precious way to work through the process.
But
a journeyman shows up and does the work no matter what.
Right.
Someone who's precious about the process won't work until they feel like they have something.
Right. There's now a little smoke in my...
I mean, maybe that's tasty. I don't know. Does it give it a certain mezcal flavor?
I don't think it tastes any better.
Okay. Different?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's rather a burning thing anyway. So Fritz Lang is playing Fritz Lang?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He's playing himself. A few great directors show up in the early Godard films. In this one we have Fritz Lang, but in, for example, Pierrot Le Fou, or The Crazy Pierrot, there's a scene with Samuel Fuller in a bar where he goes to like a party at someone else's house, and Sam Fuller, the director of films such as The Big Red One or White Dog, or those are the later films he's known for. This is not the early stuff, but stuff like that, or Pickup on South Street. He shows up in the bar or at the party, and he just talks to him for a minute about making movies in America. It's very good. And there's a few others the cameos in his films. Oftentimes I can't remember at the moment, but his films quote cinema overtly,
right?
So he has no problem saying, "Oh, this is from this" in the movie. He likes that.
That's nice.
Yeah, but I went through every single Godard film. I went through a voracious time period where I had to watch every Godard film, and this coincided with my seeing someone, we could say. Mm-hmm. And I pretty much am through all of his films, and she and I are no longer seeing each other, which is kind of funny.
Cyclical.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? Life sometimes feels that way, even though if it shouldn't. But so there was he's a very lonely individual, Godard. I've read Richard Brody has a great book on him called Everything is Cinema, and it's pretty much relating his life story to his movies in a way that's not too intellectual. But it is very, you do realize that
he's tracking his filmography to his life events.
Yeah, and trying to, it's a biography, but it's also an examination of the movies because they're pretty much the same thing.
It's a good concept.
And it's very good. Richard Brody is probably more than anyone understands Godard. If you were to read anyone's take on Godard, read Richard Brody's because he understands the man. On some level, he identifies with that kind of filmmaking. And I found it very moving. A few of his films, Contempt, I think, is probably one of the most overtly moving films. The music helps. The music, the score in this movie is really good.
As I say, the music and the shot we're currently watching are pretty evocative. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole movie is like that, and again, it's coming from a very personal place. At the same time, there is an intellectual element of, a film recalling films kind of thing, and the structure and of a movie and how do I put this?
There's a metatextual.
Yes, there's a metatextual element to all of his films. All of them. It doesn't matter how overt it is or not. There are movies that they're Brechtian. The word is Brechtian. They make you aware that you're watching a movie.
Right.
But that doesn't mean, because I think what's good about when you get into them and really can enjoy them is that they're Brechtian, but also there's an element where you're not so much watching characters as you're watching stand-ins for certain emotions, in a way. Like, characters are expressing emotions that Godard, I think, is feeling. Not so much as individuals, but so much as like a concept.
Okay.
And so Brigitte Bardot just kind of, stops loving him at a certain point, the husband. And you feel like that's what Godard is saying about his wife. And that's what you're taking away from it, is him trying to understand what happened. And that is moving, in a way, even if and obviously you have to be in the know. You have to watch it. You can't go into his movies completely blank.
Right.
They do require something of an audience in terms of knowledge.
I'm glad you're providing that context.
Well, yeah.
In our scenario.
Godard once, he talked about it, I think he was on Dick Cavett back in 1980 when he was going through his second period of quote-unquote commercial filmmaking. And Dick Cavett talks about how some of his movies are really hard, or they demand something of their audience of you can't just, they're very intellectual heady, and Godard talked about how, people, he says, he speaks rather good English, actually, he's Swiss, he's not really French, but he says, people, I can't quite do the accent, but they don't expect that of painting or poetry, but the movies, yes. I don't understand why. You're pretty much saying how no one begrudges a painting for requiring context, or no one begrudges poetry for being poetry and having an audience. You can't just read poetry. You have to understand the references in poetry to really get it. But movies, people demand to just be kind of handheld.
Sure, something that's self-contained.
Yes, and Godard just thought, well, why can't I do expect something of my audience. And just like it's anything else, and you can say there's a pretentiousness to that where you're assuming a certain level of artistry in your work.
Yeah, and you are deliberately or otherwise
you're being
isolating part of your
elitist.
audience.
One could say you're being elitist, but also Godard was bourgeois. He was raised in an upper middle class Swiss family. He's being the worst period of his career is in the late. It's that refrain there that really does it.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah. You hear that and you go, I feel sad. And he knows, like this, you just hear it and you feel sad. You don't know why.
Evocative.
Yeah, and he knows that because it's very good. Anyway, but he goes through this period where he stops making even remotely commercial films in the late 70s, or the late 60s, early 70s, where he creates the Ziga Vertov group with Jean Goran, I believe is the man's name, Jean-Pierre Goran, I could be mistaken. But they essentially start this kind of, not experimental, but this avant-garde film group collective. That the idea, as Godard put it, is not to make political films, but to make films politically.
Okay.
Exactly, right? You're hearing that and you go, okay, all right. Those films are not good because, first of all, Godard is not really the director on those, and they're not as interesting. The most famous film from that period is Tout va bien with Jane Fonda, and Godard barely directed any of that. He was in an accident, a car accident, and was hospitalized, and so he shot maybe like a day or something on that film, and that's it. And most of it was shot by the other Jean. Yeah, and that's the most famous one from that period. So Godard, and then in the mid to late 70s, he meets up with Anne Pierre Mieville. I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm not very good with French names because they're French names. But they become a couple, and she's an avant-garde filmmaker. And so they create this kind of film company together, and they create these very avant-garde experimental films. and then he takes the stuff from that period and puts them into. He tries to make commercial films again, quote unquote. Air quotes are going to be all over this.
Commercial on a sliding scale.
Yes, in the sense that there are actual actors with name value.
Right.
And there is a semblance of a plot.
Right.
But not really. Even less so than this period.
Something that could theoretically be marketed.
Yes. And so he tries to take the stuff he learned from those periods into commercial, more mainstream filmmaking again, although it's still very Godardian in a way that no one else could possibly touch. And those are the films I really... What?
No.
You smiled. You smirked a little.
No, carry on. I'm enjoying watching you dish.
And so he goes to the second period of films from the 80s all the way up till he died, really. Although there's some deviation. There's some slight changes, I would say. So the 80s films, for example, he's got people in those, and also the 90s films for the most part. He's got people like Isabelle Huppert in in a couple of his films. He has Gerard Depardieu is the lead in one film. He plays a god, or does he? That's kind of the question of that film. Is he? Maybe that didn't happen. Maybe this thing that everyone says happened. It's a good film. That film was called Oh, Woe Is Me.
Okay.
Et là pour moi, I think, is how you'd say that in French. I could be incorrect. Tommy would know better, I think, maybe.
I think that would be Poor Me. Oh, Poor Me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a direct translation.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
Oh, Woe Is Me.
Yeah.
But basically, so those films, they're much more...
with the feminine pronoun, of course.
Yes. Because the lead is a woman.
That's what I assumed based on your translation there.
Do you know some French?
Je parle un peu de français.
Oh!
J'étudie à l'école pendant 3 ans, mais ma grammaire est très mauvaise. Je voudrais parler plus.
See, this is how he got his wife, folks. This is what he did. He was fucking with his audio equipment, and then he was doing the cute thing with his audio. Like, oh, he's so cute when he... And then he was speaking French to her.
I spoke the 10 sentences of French that I know.
Yeah.
Rouge est la pomme. Le soleil est jaune.
That's right. That's very good, Isaac.
Yes, it took 3 years.
I know. I understood that part. Trois ans. I understood what you were saying.
You've got your French.
I've got the ear for it because I know a Latin language.
Right.
So yes, that's quite good though.
Thank you.
It's not a very good language, though, is it? In terms of its consistency.
No, it's a beautiful language, but it is hard to...
It's almost as hard as English to learn phonetically.
I would agree.
Because letters don't make consistent sounds. I've been dabbling in it a little bit, and I feel like the rule of thumb is you look at a French word and then you pronounce a third of the letters.
Yeah,
it's how it feels like.
Yeah, there's a lot of silent letters.
Even if it's a singular versus plural, you hear and you think phonetically there's no difference.
Right, eel and eel is identical.
Yeah, so you just know from context that you're talking about more than one thing.
Exactly.
Which is quite frustrating.
That is frustrating.
It's not, sometimes it's un, sometimes it's an, simple things like that, depending on the word.
What I think is interesting is, go to the mat if you disagree with me on this.
I probably won't.
But it seems to me that French, by far, is the language that phrases from it are consistently used in English.
Yes, more than the other language.
In their own context, more than any other language,
which
is interesting.
Well, that's the thing about English that's so wonderful, is that it consistently abuses other languages steals phrases from them. I think that's a nice thing. That's how you know it's a living language. It's still changing. And French, I think, is just one of those languages that Americans have romanticized over the years. And, we were in France for quite a bit of time. In 2 world wars. And so I think we just kind of we stole phrases from...
French traders are a large basis for our evolving population.
Yeah, so I think that's what that comes down to.
I think so, too, yeah.
Is that we just like the French. And we like to steal their words.
We think it's fancy.
We do think it's fancy.
Yeah.
I blame that on Louis XIV. The Sun King.
Let's put that at his feet.
He was the one who said, no, we don't speak Latin in my course. We're speaking French.
French.
People come here and they speak French. And all of a sudden, I guess French is an important language. Oh, he was right. He did it.
Le français seulement. Seulement le français.
Yes, exactly. Only French, and so that's where that came from. In a similar way that I forget which German, not German, but was he Bavarian? He might have been one of the Bavarian kings or emperors, Kaisers, whatever term you want to use. Was it Friedrich the First? I don't fucking remember. One of those who basically turned. This was pre-Germany, so this would have been Saxony, maybe, or was it just Bavaria? Anyway, he turned the empire into a military state. He made it so that kids after men of a certain age had to join the military. That he kind of changed the policy of the whole nation, built around like military timetables, and that's kind of where the German identity of being really like
that Gestalt.
Yes, it comes from that.
To take that term, yeah,
which is from like the 1500s,
right? And
since then, the Germans have become that. That's where that comes from. It started with one guy saying, "We're going to start acting like this."
That's one way to create a brand.
The French became really obnoxious and self-absorbed because one of the French kings said, "We're the center of the universe."
Right.
And the Germans became the Germans
Let's all be gourmands.
Because Germans became the Germans because one guy said, "No, we're all going to act like soldiers."
We're going to keep tight formations.
And that's why they're like that. And even the casual ones are punctual. I don't know how to... These Germans are just like... They all have a built-in watch.
That's why you get great DJs.
Absolutely.
All about the timing.
That's all about the timing. But, so that's, what were we even talking about? We were talking about French.
We're talking about French.
We're talking about language, which is the primary concern of Godard.
Oh, yeah.
He is obsessed with language. Which brings us to Goodbye to Language, which we'll talk about in a second.
Put a put in that.
His films, so his early ones and his later ones, he's basically thinking of several things. So he's thinking of cinema as a visual medium, as a language. What do images mean? What do they recall? What are we saying when we have a shot of two people, or of a close up, or of a reverse shot? What does this stuff mean? What is this language? And he calls attention to that fact in his movies. And also, he's thinking of the history of images and where do these things come from, and what is it when you put something on a screen today? What does it recall? What are you really thinking of? What are you referring to? And then he's also talking about language as a form of communication. All language is communication, and how do you communicate with other people certain ideas, abstract or not? And this movie is a breakdown of that. This movie Contempt is a breakdown in communication between a husband and a wife. They don't know how to speak to each other anymore. And that's what it's about. And you get the sense that Godard is, throughout his whole life, he's almost as like a scientist in a lab trying to figure out how language works in that way.
It's interesting that the statuary is keeping such a motif then.
Yes. Well, part of this is the fact that he's shooting this in CinemaScope, which is like this epic widescreen format. The idea you shoot the great Italian epics,
right?
Sodom and Gomorrah,
right?
All that stuff is shot in that aspect ratio, and this movie is really just about a couple. And this sequence of the film is probably the longest single part of the film. We're going to be in this apartment for a little while now.
All right.
At least 20 minutes, I think. We're just with these characters now as they're talking to each other, and you get the sense of you get that sense of contempt. You feel it here in this sequence. It's a very long sequence.
A great justification for CinemaScope if you want to show distance.
Yes, absolutely. And so here he is using. So we see these cuts to these epic kind of statues, which are meant to represent Greek gods.
Okay.
Like, it's Zeus
the Odyssey,
and the Odyssey and all that stuff. And so here he is thinking of literature. And what is the story of the Odyssey? A man trying to return to his wife.
That's right.
That's what it's really about, the distance between the two of them. And so, what does it mean? It doesn't. It's not. I don't think it's a one-to-one thing. I don't think he's explaining himself, but I think it's like, his movies are like a thought. One thought recalls another.
Right.
You think of one thing. He says it in Éloge de l'amour, which is translated in English to "In Praise of Love," which is not quite right. Not quite right. But in that film, one character says, "How do you think of something by thinking of something else? When you think of one thing, it makes you think of something else."
Right. Association,
and that's what all of his films do. There's association going on in
Sure.
in the themes, you could say.
Why does Bye Bye Miss American Pie drove my Chevy to the levee make sense? because those things just work together. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Well,
there is rhyme.
There is a rhyme,
but no reason.
Well, but that song also, a lot of the lyrics do recall real life events.
Right.
And that's kind of what Godard does too in his own way. And that's the kind of the Dylan-esque element one could say if one were to conflate Dylan with Godard.
Let's do it.
Well,
we know our audience. Let's talk about
the lyrics of Dylan. All recall things. They recall the Bible. They recall epic poetry. They recall real life political events in America and the world. And they do so in a way that sounds like this great fairy tale or this epic story. Or sometimes it is a very straightforward, like a protest song, you could say. But he creates these kind of epic characters through the imagery of human history.
Right.
Godard does the same thing in his own playful way. In the early films especially. So the difference between the early films and the later films is that the early films are not nearly as somber as the later ones. They're more playful. He has fun sometimes. And there are some of the later films are also quite comedic. He has a sense of humor. People forget this about him, but he's much more. He cares much less about a narrative that people can follow.
I see.
And much more about they're so stripped down, and so much of it is kind of these internal monologues, this narration. This dialogue that recalls other dialogue. He's so much more overtly intellectual. But at the same time, I think it's in a weird way more personal. Because there's no longer this kind of separation between the narrative of a film and using it as an excuse for something else. The film is just whatever it is he wants it to be. If that makes sense.
Sure.
It's hard.
It's a little pretentious.
It is a little pretentious, but the difference between when Godard does it and so many other people who've come since then, because a lot of people, you could say, steal from Godard,
sure,
is that when other people do it, they actually don't know what they're talking about. Godard, whether or not his technique works or not, he actually is referring to things he knows.
Sure.
And so for him, it's sincere. It's a sincere attempt to do something, whether or not it works. And I don't think Godard even liked all of his movies. He thought some of them were failures. So it's not like he wasn't critical of his own style. He just couldn't do it any other way. He couldn't make for that time period, like a $20 million epic. He couldn't do. He could if he was offered the money, but he knew he was never going to get offered that kind of money, and he couldn't do it like that. He would never be able to make a Ben-Hur or something like that. This is him doing that.
Sure. Right.
Right. So that tells you something.
Yeah. No, he really likes to nod to things.
Yes, right, with the whole robe and
the garb there,
and but he still wears his hat,
the Hollywood hat over the Grecian Roman.
Yeah, you see, and it's
wrap of his towel or whatever it is.
Yeah, and you have these statues that are just in the apartment that are just like these old kind of like Roman Greek statues.
Yeah, the furniture is quite
stripped down.
Yeah, but also distracting. I'm like, all of it appeals to me.
Yeah, here's what I say, because...
Oh, my.
Yeah, this is a visually sumptuous film.
That's good use of the... Good word well used.
Yeah. And here we have the most overt reference to his wife, in that now Brigitte Bardot is wearing a wig that looks like Anna Karina's hairstyle.
Oh, yeah?
So it's like you're looking at this like, oh, well, come on now. And this is like one of those things where you're watching it and it makes sense that she's not in the film. This is one of the few films of this period where she's not. She's in a few. She's like in 7 of his movies from this period.
Needs the separation.
I think she was off shooting something else as well. She might have been shooting. The timeline. She was shooting something around the same time, and it might have been in Italy too. She might have been shooting something in Italy, but I think she shot The Nun maybe a year before this, the Jacques Rivette film, while he was shooting. What would it even have been at that point? He shot these films so fast. Sometimes I forget which came. Which is in which order. Which is in which order.
Especially when you're talking about shooting multiples at once.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through the timeline. So, I might as well.
By all means, use your cheat sheet.
My cheat sheet being
cheat sheet,
being the internet. Yes,
yeah.
yes. He might have been shooting Le Carabinier with the rifleman. I think is how you. I'm not saying I pronounced it.
Don't speak that French.
I don't think I pronounced it correctly, but Carabinier, something like that. So yeah, so he would have probably the first film. This is technically in the wrong order, but it's because Le Petit Soldat was his second film, but it was banned in France for a couple of years because of its scenes of water torture and allusions to the Algerian War, which was a big no-no in France at the time. It was like their Vietnam.
Soft topic, yeah.
Yeah, they were a little sensitive to that.
Sensitive topic.
But technically, so he shot Breathless, and then Le Petit Soldat, which was the first film he did with Anna Karina. Actually, he offered her a part in Breathless. Most people know this, I think. It's a pretty common story. It's maybe even a little apocryphal. But he sees a photo of Anna Karina, or she sees a commercial, because she's a model. She's from Denmark, but she moves to France to presumably work in the industry.
Right.
And he sees her in an ad for soap, like a bathtub. She's in a bathtub naked with some soap. And he says, he's like, who is she? I'll find me this girl, kind of thing, as the directors want to do. And then he finds her and he offers her a part in Breathless, and he tells her that she would need to get naked for part of it, and then she says, I don't do nudity. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So he doesn't use her. He moves on. He shoots Breathless, and then he offers her another part, the lead woman part at least, in Le Petit Soldat. And there's no nudity, God bless. And so she takes it, and then they, of course, and you see it when you watch the film. He falls in love with her. She falls in love with him. They get married. And they have a tumultuous marriage that lasts, I think, technically 4 or 5 years. I mean, by the time they did their last film together, which was in 1967, I want to say, or 1968, which was made in the USA. That's the last film they did together. They were already divorced by then.
Okay.
They had
still
been
working together?
Yeah, they were still working. They had been divorced, but they still worked on that one last film
project. Got it.
So yeah, and again,
admirable.
And you watch the film, and again, that's part of the film because this plot of the film is it's like an American noir gangster noir film where she is basically her ex-husband dies, and she has to go back to town to find out what happened to him.
Interesting.
You think that you're like, okay, well, come on now,
working through some shit.
You're working through some things as you're doing this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very interesting. And I did not know this until after I did research on and I became really invested in Godard. That I realized he had tried to commit suicide 2 times in the late '60s. Get suicide, he did it. He was married to his second wife, and Wiachemsky, I want to say is her name.
Okay.
Wiachemsky, something like that. Also French, and he tries to overdose on pills, I think, at one point. At this point, and he goes through a kind of life, I guess, kind of midlife. He was in his late 30s at that point. He would have been in his late 30s,
approaching midlife. Sure.
A kind of a crisis. He goes through a crisis with his movies, with his love life. Obviously, he divorced with Karina. His second marriage was falling apart, and that's when he kind of reinvents himself. He meets Anne Marie a little bit after this, and then his life gets back on track. Anne Marie is a very big part of the second half of his life.
So he attempts suicide twice?
Yeah, and then he finally...
Third time's the charm,
unfortunately. Because he did finally decide to... In Switzerland, it's legal to do assisted suicide. And so that's what he did at the age of 92, 91.
Power move.
Last year, yes. It's very Hemingway-esque.
Yeah.
Minus the whole, shotgun element of it. He didn't blow his brains. Yeah, it's less messy. It was a tidy death. Mm-hmm. And he decided he had had enough. Now there's still talk, apparently, that he was working on a couple more projects before he died, and not that it really matters that much. The man's dead and all, but there's still talk that this year at Cannes they might premiere one of his films posthumously.
Okay.
He was working on 2 films, and I don't know what they shot. I don't know if he finished what he was shooting.
To what degree he was in progress on.
Yeah, because when one commits suicide, one doesn't really give a shit about.
Right.
It's like, I don't really care if I finish this or not. It doesn't matter that much.
I won't be around.
But it would be nice if there was at least one more Godard film to a waiting public.
Yeah, you can add one more notch to your belt.
So I've seen just about all of them, except for, or I technically have seen it, but the last film that I've in this go around of watching every single Godard film, the one film I have yet to see is Goodbye to Language in 3D, which is what we are trying to organize.
It's an important element.
And I just found out that I had a 3D copy of this film.
Harder to accomplish than one might expect.
It's not that it's harder to accomplish. It's just that we actually need to do it.
Well, we're still struggling with the technology on that one now.
We just don't know what we
figure
need.
it out. Right.
I can get all the parts easily. It's not expensive. It's just a question of, okay, are we doing this, guys? Are we watching this movie?
I'm ready whenever.
I'm ready whenever, too. I want to watch this fucker.
So I guess ball's in Alan's court.
He's
But
not,
for all we know,
he's dead. We still haven't gotten a response. He might be at the time of this recording, which is on February the 28th, the last day of the month of the year of our Lord 2023. He might. Why are you laughing? You're the Lutheran.
I like that. I like it.
And he might have died. I have my suspicions.
I mean, this will be the record.
Yeah, if he's fine, then obviously it's nothing. But if he is dead, then it's, well, I called it.
Yep. It's on. It's the thought is out in the ether now.
Well, it has been for some time.
The ghost is in the machine.
Yeah. He's ringing a little.
Goodbye to language.
Yeah, it's it's a movie. Again, his later films don't really have plots, but as it stands, it's a film that was made specifically in 3D, and it's about a married couple that doesn't know how to communicate to each other.
There's that obsession with language again.
And then the dog helps them out.
Oh, really?
There's a dog, which is
part of
apparently
the plot?
yes.
Okay.
The dog helps them to speak to each other,
Interesting.
and I think the dog is Godard's real life dog. I think it's his dog. He's a star in the film, really.
Is he in the Union?
I don't know.
The dog union?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
This technically wouldn't have been a French film, right? It's a Swiss film.
Okay, I see.
I don't know what
I don't know what the Swiss dog union
Yeah.
situation is.
I mean, technically speaking, outside of Godard, I don't know that I've seen maybe one Swiss film.
Sure. Can't say I've seen a single one, except I guess if this qualifies.
No. I mean, again, he's a Swiss filmmaker, but this was filmed in Italy, so.
I think is this the no? I did see Breathless. Never mind. I was going to say this may be the first Godard film that I've ever seen. Second, I guess.
Yeah, you've seen Breathless.
It's true.
Did it leave you breathless?
It left me perplexed.
Yes. And that's one of the more basic ones.
That's right.
You know?
That's a commercial.
That's
with
one
the
of
big air
the
quotes
most commercial
again.
ones, really.
Films.
Do we want to? I can tell you which ones I think are worth watching. They're all worth watching.
Yes.
But
yes,
the ones that really struck me the most.
Ones that spoke to you.
I just
Walk me through them.
So I think probably the greatest one of them all, and also at the same time probably the most baffling. We go with the audio there?
I'm just switching ears so this one doesn't get sore.
Does that happen to you very often?
Sometimes.
Well, the one that really moved me the most, and I don't know why. Well, actually, no, that's two of them. The first one I'll talk about is Hail Mary,
Okay.
which is a bit blasphemous of a film.
Okay.
It's basically a Virgin Mary story set in modern times. But again, this is 1985, 1980.
Okay.
Yeah, 1985.
So this is during his return to commercial work?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so again, this is a much more, this period is very abstract. I mean, more abstract than the earlier stuff. Not as abstract as his experimental stuff, but...
Right, on the sliding scale.
Yeah, on the slide, it's all relative. So basically, a man is they're together, they're a couple, but they haven't slept together, and then she gets pregnant. And,
Yikes.
yeah. And then there's like an angel, and two angels, there are two angels that show up in the story. One of them is like a full-grown man, the other one's like a child girl.
Okay.
And they pretty much tell the husband, who's Joseph, they tell Joseph, you can't have sex with her. You know, she's spoken for.
She's reserved.
Essentially. And but you're going to be her husband.
God earmarked.
You can't sleep with her, but you're going to be her husband.
Okay.
And so a large part of the film becomes this, basically him trying to get over his own horniness. Really, where he's like, can we like sleep together at least once? She's like, no, we can't. And then he has to learn how to love her without touching her.
I see. Not even mouth stuff.
No mouth stuff.
Hand stuff?
No hand. No.
Oh my God.
No,
Does
Isaac.
it get into these minutiae or not?
Yes, it does. We'll say it does.
There we go.
But it doesn't
I'm
happen.
not the first one to think.
Yeah. Okay. But so that's what the movie's really about. Is or at least that's what what it feels like. It's about the story. It's about the story of the Virgin Mary, and this idea of consummate versus not consummated love, and how does and that's a key phrase in the film is how to learn to love to someone without touching them. Which is actually quite a profound thought when you think about it.
Yeah.
And of course the film was considered quite blasphemous when it came out because it presented an image of essentially a Virgin Mary,
a sexualized Virgin Mary.
Yes.
Yeah.
A young and actual teenage girl, and she's naked at certain points in the film, and they don't like that.
Right.
They don't like depictions of their Virgin Mary like that. So the Catholic Church Did not like it. I think James Gunn, of all people, called it the worst film he'd ever seen.
Oh, geez. That's interesting.
It's very interesting. I think he raised Catholic?
I don't know. It seems like there's something to unpack there.
Of all things, even of all Godard films, to say that's the worst one you've ever seen, or did you just not see any of the other ones?
Yeah.
But that was quite a profound experience. I remember being in a post-coital state with my lady.
An
afterglow. And I remember looking at her, and she was naked, and she looked just like the character in Hail Mary. She looked just like the Virgin Mary. And then I was putting my hand on her stomach just like in the movie.
Strange thought.
It was a very specific thing that happened. I was quite moved. It was quite a moment of grace for me.
It's going to be difficult for me to watch that film now.
No, well, you're probably not going to watch it, Isaac.
I don't think now I will.
I don't think you were going to anyway.
Oh, it was next on the list.
Oh, was it? until
you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
Now it's ruined.
First of all, you don't know what this lady looks like.
That's irrelevant. Well, now I would. That's the problem. You just conflated the two.
Well, they're not. It's not a 1-to-1 thing.
And it was an explicit conflation.
All right. Do you have a problem thinking of me naked?
No.
I think of you naked. I'm thinking about you naked right now.
I have a problem of thinking of you touching other naked people, which is a weird delineation.
I know. I think I understand that though.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the idea of Tommy being with other people.
No, I don't like that either.
I don't really like the thought
standing alone naked. Not a problem.
Yeah, I don't like the thought of his sisters being with other people.
Sure,
but that's for different reasons.
But that's a whole.
That's more of a jealousy thing.
Yeah.
Even the ones I haven't met, I think I feel like I should have gone prima nocta.
You have enough of a sample to go on.
Yeah, I think so. Sure. They all look the same.
Sure. I
mean, they all look a little different, but they do have the same face.
Those Mitchell genes.
Yeah, it's kind of astonishing. Tommy looks the most different from all of them.
Yeah.
Not just because he's the male.
Not just because he's the male.
Anyway, where were we talking? Oh, yeah, and after Hail Mary, there's King Lear. He technically does an adaptation of King Lear. It's very technical, though, because the movie starts, that movie, King Lear starts, and, she's naked again. Bridget Bardot is on the screen.
Insane. Oh, no, just a deep shag rug.
Yeah, it's a shaggy rug. It's the 60s, after all.
It's the 60s.
But in Back to King Lear, the movie begins with, who was that writer that he hires? He hires a well-known, the time is 10:01. That's a palindrome. Or is it only a palindrome if...
I've had this debate, and I believe a palindrome...
Is only with letters?
Is applicable to any what's the word I'm looking for?
Any kind of
symbol, yeah.
Yeah, it's a collection of symbols. Yeah. But in King Lear, the movie begins with a scene of Norman Mailer, the actual writer, writing an adaptation of King Lear. And Godard, in voiceover, says, Norman Mailer was hired to do an adaptation of King Lear.
Okay.
It's not quite, it's not that straight, but the gist of it is him saying, and then, he wrote the script, and then he got on a plane back home with his daughter, and you realize in real life that he got Norman Mailer was involved, but then Godard wanted Norman Mailer to shoot a scene with his daughter, like the actual act in the movie, and they do one scene together, but he wanted it to be a bigger part of it, I guess. And Norman was like, "This is too fucking weird for me. I'm ghosting. I'm leaving." And then and it just feels, and the rest of the movie, it's almost science fiction technically because it takes place in a post-apocalyptic future. Technically,
interesting.
We're in a hotel in a post-apocalyptic future where this one person, the descendant of William Shakespeare the Junior, the Fifth, or something, is tasked with rewriting all of the great Shakespeare plays because they've been lost since the apocalypse. And so he has to try and rewrite these works, almost from a kind of sense memory almost. And while he's at this hotel, he meets a father and a daughter played by... let me look up the cast.
Yeah, take your time. You know how you make a king.
Played by Burgess Meredith and Molly Ringwald.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Burgess Meredith, who, of course, is most famous for playing the coach in the Rocky films.
That's right.
Which leads me to my place of work. I work at a kind of slot cafe, and one of the games on one of these slot machines is a Rocky machine.
Oh, really?
And every time like you win money or something, you hear Burgess Meredith saying one of the lines in the movie. It goes like, you're gonna be a fighter. He's a real contender.
That's great.
And so now every time I think of Burgess Meredith, I hear those haunting gambling noises, and I see him in this movie for the first time. I think it's Burgess Meredith. It's the Rocky coach, and he plays basically a Shakespearean character. Don Lear is his name in the film. He's playing King Lear.
Okay.
He's the character he is King Lear, and his daughter is Cordelia, Molly Ringwald. But so they're in the film, and they are the characters from King Lear, but they're not the characters, and they meet this guy who's trying to rewrite the works. And that's what so when we say this movie is an adaptation of King Lear,
it's all very perplexing.
Yeah. And then at a certain point, Godard shows up in the film. It's actually a star-studded cast, because this is his only English-language film.
Okay.
And so Godard shows up as a film director or something who lives out in the woods on a compound. And he's got like this, he's got these cables at one point on his head that makes him look very Rastafarian, but they're just like cables for movies and stuff. And there's a fart joke. He does a fart. I don't know why you're looking at me like that. Isaac is squinting at me.
I'm having a very difficult time wrapping my head around.
He does a fart joke in the movie, which is actually very funny. And then Woody Allen shows up near the end of the film as an editor of films.
Okay.
And he also quotes from Shakespeare. It's one of the most amazing films I've ever seen, and I don't think I could ever truly understand it. But it's just as our friend, the detective from Knives Out. What's the character's name? Daniel Craig's character, as he would
Benoit Blanc.
Benoit Blanc, as he would say, he would call it so perplexing.
Yeah.
But damn interesting though. It's just like that.
It is perplexing.
It's just so damn interesting. You can't. It's alluring, and it's an amazing film. It's one of the greatest films ever made. Actually, I don't know if you know that. So King Lear.
Well-known fact.
So after that, that film really moved. It really was just like it was quite something. But Julia Delpy shows up in it at some point too. That's true. Peter Sellers, not the Pink Panther Peters, but a different actor.
Another Peter Sellers.
Menahem Golem, because also that's something else. This film was financed by Cannon Films.
Oh, really?
This is a Cannon film.
Interesting.
From the company that brought us Death Wish 3.
Yeah.
Here is Godard's King Lear.
Fascinating.
Well, that was during
what a repertoire.
Well, that was near the end of the Cannon cycle of films when they were trying to actually go for like award prestigious films. So they financed a Godard film, they financed a Cassavetes film, a couple other things.
Cassavetes?
Love Streams.
Interesting.
Yes, it's actually a very good film. And it's because it's the film that Cassavetes made with the largest budget. He actually indulges in certain sequences. There are someone's got a budget when all of a sudden there are surreal sequences.
They
You're like,
get to do the things they want to do.
Yeah, look at that. We got surreal imagery in this film. Okay, all right. Someone got a couple
you
hundred.
Spend someone else's money.
Someone got a few $1 million on this one. But so that one was very good. As far as the later stuff goes, I liked very much "Oh Woe Is Me," with Gerard Depardieu playing God, or maybe not.
Or maybe not, right? You said,
Yes.
oh, God, not a God.
Well, I guess a God. A God.
Christian God.
A God, not a God. But
not Yahweh, necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. I would have to rewatch the film and look at the subtitles and say, are they capitalizing the God here? Or is it... I'd have to
Lower
remember.
G or big G.
Is it, lowercase, it's just like in Guardians 2. It's like, you're a God? Lowercase G there, Drax.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was JLG. He has a film called JLG.
Short for something?
Jean-Luc Godard.
Oh, okay.
JLG Self-Portrait in December. That's what the film is called. And it's like a little bit over an hour, and it is very much like a self-portrait. It's about he's something I love about the later Godard films is when he acts in his own films.
Okay.
He's a very good actor. he is great in King Lear. And in that same year, he appeared in another film he did called Keep Your Right Up, which is really almost like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It's so ridiculous. And he plays he plays a filmmaker who's referred to as the Prince, and he is like a child. He is so stupid. It's wonderful. He's got like this shit-eating grin on the whole movie.
Okay.
It's not, I don't know how I feel about that film. I don't think it's one of his best, but it's certainly, it's funny. It's a funny movie. There's some really good music in it. Anyway, that's a story for another time. As far as the classic period of his work, the early stuff, the stuff that he's known for.
Yes, the quintessential, if you will.
Yeah, everything from like 60 all the way up to like 67, we'll say. The films that I would recommend the most. Contempt is one of them. Contempt, I think, is one of those films that you can watch and really just like. We're still in the apartment, though.
We did shift out for a little bit. They were in the car again for a hot moment.
Oh,
and then that may have been a flashback.
Yeah, they went back into the house.
But we are... Oh, my. Interesting. I don't know what to do with that close-up on the lampshade.
Look at them.
Now they're contextualize it.
Look at them. Now they're separated by a lamp.
Yeah.
There's something in between them.
There's division.
Cinema.
Yes.
Poetry. Anyway, so Contempt is one of the ones I would recommend. I think the film that most people like, I think it's actually Tarantino's favorite Godard film, which is how you know he's an idiot and doesn't really like Godard that much. It's a good movie, but it's very...
he's a neophyte?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. It's a fun movie. It's called Band of Outsiders.
Okay.
A bande à part, as it is in French, which is the name of Tarantino's production company.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's a reference to that.
Interesting.
And here's the thing. The movie is probably his most accessible film. It is almost a genre film.
Okay.
The story of that film is, I think it might be based on a true story, too, actually. It's about, basically, a girl gets involved with two guys, and it's kind of a love triangle, but basically the two guys are also, they make a plan to rob the girl's, not parents, but her guardians. They rob her house, because her guardians live in a mansion.
Oh, yes, you were filling me in on this the last time we spoke.
And so they make a plan to essentially try and rob them,
right,
and get away with the money. And the girl's involved in that.
Because
they get her involved in it.
She's an impertinent
youth.
Impertinent child.
Yes. But that's and the movie is very followable. It is very much just the characters and their interaction. And then some of the dialogue and some of the narration is a little more Godardian. But basically it's a minor work. It's him, he's kind of just doing it's him almost doing like one of those American genre crime films, like something that Nicholas Ray would have done or something like that. And it's pretty faithful to that kind of style. And so that's why someone like Tarantino would like it, because it's actually almost a movie.
Right. And him being a genre whore.
Yeah, him being a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
It's weird. I shouldn't insult the man so much. I do admire a lot of his films. But still, sometimes he says things that piss me off. But that's a film that I think anyone could watch, even people who don't like Godard films. They could watch that and enjoy it. So I would recommend that to anyone, a band of outsiders. Or The Outsiders. Sometimes it's just called The Outsiders. And then I would say, the one that I really loved was Alphaville. It's science fiction, but low-budget science fiction. I love low-budget science fiction.
Of the ones you've pitched to me or not pitched to me, but described to me thus far, Alphaville is the most appealing.
Even though I've said the least about it.
Perhaps that's the allure.
The allure is that I haven't said anything, so I haven't ruined it yet.
Well, no, the way you were describing it as...
It's no King Lear.
Sure, as of the low-budget sci-fi, and you described it, I'm trying to remember the terminology you used. Ooh, that's nice. You used an interesting word where you almost called it secret. You didn't use the word secretly, but like secretly sci-fi.
I don't know what I could have possibly said at the time.
Insidious, maybe? I don't
know. No, Insidious sounds too menacing. But
something in that.
Well, it is dystopian.
Okay.
It certainly is that. So I can say that is. But it's science fiction, but barely science fiction. I mean, it's science fiction because it's dystopian. They talk about there's machines that control everything, but you watch it and you're like, there are cars.
Right.
Everyone's dressing normally. Outside of certain imagery.
Okay.
Yeah, then you would have no way of knowing that this is like a science fiction film. But that's what's so good about it. Low budget science fiction I find really interesting because it's more imaginative than oftentimes very literal.
Yes, this is what we were talking about when we were leaving Avatar, I believe.
Yes.
Oh God, no.
Your battery's running low there, Isaac. What are we going to do?
Hold down the fort. I'll grab the charger.
Yeah, you do that. So I will be in charge of discussing this film some more. All right, so at this point in the film, we're about an hour in. We're more than halfway. We've spent a great deal of time in the apartment with Brigitte Bardot and Michel Piccoli. Michel Piccoli, who actually makes several, I think, more appearances in Godard's films. He is, I think, would it be in the, I think it's in Passion. Yes, it might be in Passion, where he plays the head of this kind of bourgeois family that controls this kind of laundromat or factory, I should say, in town. And Isabelle Huppert plays a worker in that factory who is maybe has an involvement with the director, who is Polish or at least Eastern European origin. Certainly his most visually sumptuous, beautiful film, I'd say, of the late period is Passion. And that's something else that I think I like about the later period films, almost more so than these films. Is Raoul Cotard, who is the cinematographer on this film and a few of Godard's early, maybe all of them actually. He comes back to shoot a few of Godard's films in the 80s and 90s. And they are definitely much more visually rigorous.
Okay.
Much less handheld, many static shots.
More controlled. Very beautiful imagery, though.
He shot Passion, which is a film about a filmmaker trying to make a movie. And the imagery of that film is all the things we see him shoot are basically famous paintings.
Okay.
So they're recreating famous paintings on the film.
Tableau vivant.
Yes.
Okay.
Very well too. It's quite, and I forget what it's called, but he shot on the same set that Francis Ford Coppola was doing One from the Heart.
Okay.
He shot essentially like a 9-minute short film in one day, using that set. That was just them trying to get one specific shot. The whole short film is, I think it's called All the Maidens Are Round, or the Fair Maidens Are Round, or something like that.
How economical.
Yeah, and it's very good. You watch it and you think, oh, he could have done like a Hollywood production if he wanted to, because he knows how to do it. He knows how to make things interesting to look at. He just didn't want to. He just didn't want to.
That was brilliant.
I forget what's happening at this point in the film. So they're going out.
The last thing I remember seeing is the kind of the core of what you were saying the film is, where she says, "I decided I don't love you anymore."
Oh, you read that part?
For no particular reason.
She says that? You saw that?
Yeah. They just had that when they were doing the back and forth over the ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now and I think they're auditioning girls for a part in the film. I think that's what's going on.
And yeah, they certainly seem to be liking the technique of that kind of just rolling back and forth.
Oh yeah, the panning.
Uh-huh.
The
kind of like an oscillation.
Yeah,
between the two.
Lateral tracking shot,
I
guess you'd call it. I mean, it's not really tracking them because they're not moving.
Right. Lateral dolly movement.
Yeah, something like that. But
ping pong.
Yeah. And it's widescreen. You can see the way they morph at the end of the image. It reminds me, it recalls Jackie Chan movies, which come later. So
show your work.
That's not what they're going for, because Jackie Chan comes a couple decades after this. But when I think of those Jackie Chan movies, I think of like the wide angle lenses.
Sure.
And like they're really wide too, almost fisheye. And so when the cameras move, you see a lot of morphing at the ends of the screen. And I always think of that when I think of Jackie Chan. When I see that, I think of Jackie Chan going steady, wide angle. And that's what Godard's doing with his steady, wide angles. I'm trying to watch all of the French New Wave films now. I mean, that's not quite right. I've done pretty much all of Godard films, and so I've seen a few Truffaut, and all of them. But I thought this is the year I'm going to watch all of the films by the principal filmmakers of the French New Wave. I'm going to watch every single one of them. All the ones I haven't seen.
That's a deep bench.
I'm going to finish Truffaut. I'm going to go through Rivette. I'm going to go through Chabrol, and I'm going to finish Romero. I've got maybe 2 or 3 Romero films I haven't seen.
All right.
And I'm going to do it. Maybe I'll finish Agnes Varda. That one's not as important to me, quite frankly.
Okay.
She's a good filmmaker. It's just that she's not one of the main.
Sure.
She's a left bank filmmaker. That's a little different. But yeah, that's my goal, is to go through all of them.
So before we run out of time here,
well, how much time do we have? We've got like 30 minutes.
All right, that should give us ample time
to do what?
In relation to the French New Wave feast that you've been indulging in, you have a creation of your own in mind that's in relation to that?
Several.
Let's discuss your ideas.
Well, I think I'm going through a period of creative. No, I'm not going to say a burst of because I haven't done anything yet. But I've been very inspired by these movies.
Yeah, creative inspiration.
I've been inspired by Godard. He was one of two people. So I have this idea for a short video essay I'm going to do, which is not really a video essay because that implies that I'm going to try and explain something,
analyze something.
And I'm not going to do that. It's more like the best example of what I'm trying to do would be like JLG, the film, Self-Portrait in December, where it is just kind of like it's someone almost making like a diary entry with a movie.
Okay.
That's really what that movie feels like. And that's what but mine would be much shorter than that. It would be like a short thing. And I would frame it in the context of a letter. Because two very important filmmakers died last year. It's this could go back years, the story of the inspiration for this. But basically, the way it's framed is I'm writing a letter to someone.
A specific someone? Or...
Not necessarily.
It's arbitrary.
I mean, for the purpose of the essay, it won't be a specific person, but it will be like I am writing to a specific... that's the closest thing to a plot element in the video essay would be, is like the compulsion to do that. But then the film itself is a kind of is a letter. The movie is a video letter. Okay. That's what it's going to be, really. Okay. And it's part of it is a letter to two dead filmmakers who died last year, who are the one connection, or maybe one of several connections, is that they were both filmmakers whom at one point I disliked vehemently, and then grew to love and to appreciate in a way that reminded me of myself. And I think that's the conclusion I reached when I really got into Godard and learned so much about him, was the things I disliked about him are things that I see in myself. Sure.
That's usually at least for me, that's usually the source of dislike.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe what we dislike in others is what we fear in ourselves.
Exactly.
Which is probably a very important thing to realize whenever you meet someone you don't like. Mm-hmm. I don't know why you're looking at me like that.
No.
I feel like you're damning me with something.
I'm not damning you with nothing.
Okay. All right. I don't know, man. He's thinking of something right now. He doesn't want to say out loud.
I got thoughts.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear him when this turns off. I can't wait to do like so.
Off the record.
What the fuck were you talking about? But yeah, so two filmmakers who died last year. One of them died at the very beginning of the year, and his name was Peter Bogdanovich. He died January...
Oh, that was this past year?
Yeah, he died January 6th, 2022, of complications from Parkinson's at the age of 82. Godard, who was about 10 years older than him, committed assisted suicide at the age of 92, later that year in September. And these are two filmmakers whom I've grown to identify with very tremendously. And so,
I didn't realize you didn't like Bogdanovich at one point.
I did not.
Interesting.
I didn't like him. I hadn't seen most of his films. I had seen maybe The Last Picture Show and Mask, the theatrical cut, and I had known some of his film. Not even really criticism because he wasn't really a critic, but I'd read some of his stuff, and I just found him a bit of a he seemed to me a bit of a blowhard.
Sure.
And then at a certain point, what happened with him? That was years ago. At this point, I was still in college when this happened, or maybe no, I was actually just out of college. I was no longer in college when this happened, where I was going through a rough patch, looking for work, and I got into the music of Bruce Springsteen, and then I watched the director's cut of Mask, which has like Bruce Springsteen songs in it, and I loved that version of the movie. I thought was wonderful. And then I said, okay, I got to watch some Bogdanovich films, and then from there I saw What's Up Doc and Paper Moon and all of his films, and actually. Just this last, maybe like a month, not even a month ago, I finally watched the last Bogdanovich film I had not seen, which was At Long Last Love, the musical film he made in 1975, I want to say, starring Burt Reynolds, Sybil Shepherd, Madeline Kahn, and some Italian.
Some Italian.
I don't know his name, but he's good in the movie too. He's one of the four principal actors, and they're all good. And it was a lovely film. I don't have much to say about that because it is pretty light. It's not like a film that... it's just him trying to do like a 30s musical.
Got it.
And the music is all Cole Porter music.
Oh, cool.
Which is great.
That's great. That's a great premise on its own.
Yeah. A very Art Deco film visually. A lot of white. Everything is black and white. I mean, the movie's in color, but everything is in black or white. The sets are all... Cool. Their furniture is all in white or in black, and they're all wearing black tie or white tie. That's all the colors of the film. It's quite something. You're the top. I don't know the lines of that song, but it's a great song. You're the smile on the Mona Lisa.
Great.
It's a really wonderful film. I'd recommend it. But yeah, that's the video essay, the video letter, I would say, is a kind of inspiration, or a kind of a letter or a memoriam to those two filmmakers, him and Godard. And so that's one of them. That's one of the ideas. I have this other idea that's kind of a lark, but we'll see if it gets made.
Explain your lark.
Well, the lark is that we were talking about the Final Destination films, and,
yes.
And I just said, wouldn't it be funny if someone did like a Final Destination film, but like the French New Wave? So it's really, there's no real gruesome murders in it. It's more just like this kind of existential crisis of, what is life kind of thing. Back in Capri now, look at that.
Gorgeous.
Really just
gorgeous.
You see, I might have to climb that rock mountain there. I might have to rock climb that.
There you go. That's a good justification to rock climb.
Yeah. That's another story.
The rock climbing?
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that now.
We don't have time to unpack that at this point.
At this point in time. Actually, I think we do. I'm seeing someone who likes rock climbing, and so I might have to rock climb at some point. That's all. We just did it. So yeah, that's
It's just one layer.
That is true. As Godard proves to us, there's many layers to a film. Yeah. Endless, almost. But, yeah, so that's the idea for that.
Yeah, tackle survivor's guilt.
Maybe. That could be a part of it.
Existential dread.
It would be... I imagine it being almost a science fiction...
Form.
Yeah, almost a science fiction element like Alphaville, where I would love it to be in black and white. We'd have to shoot. Oh, first of all, because we're going to shoot on digital cameras, and everything looks better in black and white anyway than in color. I don't know if you agree with that.
I don't agree with that, but
I don't. Most
but
things.
I won't argue with you. I think that format certainly suits your concept,
and it suits my taste, quite frankly.
That's fine too.
This is another even more of a lark, and this one I don't know. We'd have to shoot it at my place of work.
Okay.
That's the only part that makes it even really difficult. But I'd love the idea of Bellatar.
No.
He did films like Satatango.
Nope.
Then if you don't know that one, you don't know any of his films.
All right.
So basically, Bellatar is known for making very long movies. Satatango is 7 hours.
Okay.
And these films that are very much very slow paced, they are slow cinema. That's what they're called. They're known as slow cinema, where takes will go on for like a minute. And characters, or even longer than a minute, and characters will just take a beat before they say something.
Good way to demonstrate what you're talking about.
And so everything is stretched out, and these shots that last for a long time, and they're very slow, and you're just kind of watching it, and it's very hypnotic.
Okay.
And some would say boring, and I would not begrudge them for saying that. I don't love it. But I thought, again, wouldn't it be funny is the conceit. What if someone did, Clerks by way of Bellatar?
Okay.
You just do Clerks, but with these really long takes, with this kind of morose dialogue, and people just kind of, you can see them over the counter with a cigarette, and someone's at one of the gambling machines, and, they're playing, and they're playing.
Sounds interminable.
It sounds, doesn't it?
Maybe that's the point.
That is kind of the point. And then you're just kind of and it wouldn't be like a long film, but it would be maybe like 40. If I could get 40 minutes out of that, that'd be fun for me. But the music's getting even louder. It's swelling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're at the house now. Yes. We're at that house, but that has literal steps on the outside that lead to the roof.
It's pretty damn cool.
It's pretty insane. I think that it actually is in real life some producer's house on the island of Capri.
It's a way to fucking live.
Yeah, isn't it just? But, so that's another idea I have, is to do like a Bellatar Clerks. I don't know why, as a lark, I think it would be amusing. And there's a couple of...
the conceit.
Yeah, there's a couple more ideas I can't quite recall at the moment, but I know I have them.
All right, fair enough.
There's, you know what that feeling when there's like a spot in your brain, I know something's there,
set something aside,
but the file's been misplaced. Yeah. And then you go to Agnes and go, Agnes, do you have something on the... on the Who's It's file, and then she's going through her files, let me check. I'm like, oh yeah, that was sent down to this other department for And then you're like, oh, why'd you do that, Agnes? I kind of need that file right now. And it's like, well, I could call them. And you're like, oh, yeah, I don't want to call them because it's the same guy. He doesn't like me.
Gotta wait 2 to 3 business days.
And she's like, yeah, but I don't want to do it because, I kind of need this by the end of the week. I want to work on it so I have a free weekend.
Yeah.
And then Agnes is like sitting there with her cigarette, and she's kind of an older lady with one of those glasses with the
I see it. Yeah.
And so she's just like, I don't know what to tell you, sweetie. And it's like, look, you want me to call them or you don't want me to call them? And I'm like, I guess you got it. But don't say it's for me. It's like, well, I'm your secretary. They're going to know it's for you. I don't know. Say like you're doing it like the boss told you to do it. And it's like, I don't feel comfortable doing that.
This is coming from the top.
Agnes, just do it, goddammit. Just, okay, I don't want to deal with you shouldn't have said, why did you do that? I tell you all the time not to go through my things. That when I want you to reorganize something, I'll have you reorganize it.
Look, if you didn't keep things such a mess, Agnes wouldn't need to get involved.
Don't you take her side.
I mean, I'm just saying...
She's a fictional woman in my mind.
Someone needs to stand up for her.
So that's... And she gets a good job. She has a good job. She gets benefits. She has dental.
Yeah, but that vision benefit is pretty shitty. 1 eye exam per year, 1 pair of glasses, that's not going to last.
What is she doing with her glasses that she needs more than 1 pair?
She's got them on a chain, man. They clearly fall off all the time, or she wouldn't have the chain.
That's not my concern. All right, I treat her well.
She has a slippery nose bridge.
Look, I'm a good boss. She just has one job. She sets my appointments. She reminds me when it's lunch. And she can't do this. Why does she know? But anyway, I don't want to talk about Agnes anymore.
I'm getting frustrated.
I'm getting a little frustrated talking about Agnes. All right. Anyway, where was I? So yeah, that's what it's like. There's like an idea in my brain, and I can't quite find it, but I know it's there. I'll find it.
You should take dictation more often.
I should take.
Wouldn't that be nice?
No.
You just had like.
Oh, if I had like a woman that I slept with sometimes, and she wrote things down for me.
Exactly. Just a person in the corner with a typewriter. You're like, take this down.
And also,
you just had like a long running record of it.
Right, and then also blowjob.
That would be good too. In some moments.
I feel like sometimes you just tolerate me.
They gotta stay in the corner,
and you don't. They gotta stay in the corner.
You don't want a person like that out in the middle of everything.
No, that's true. You're right about that. That can be quite cumbersome.
Yeah.
Do you have experience with this?
It's it's the corner of the mind, corner of the room kind of.
Preston Sturges' mother worked with Aleister Crowley.
On magic?
Yeah. She probably was in those weird orgies with him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, those sex orgies that Aleister Crowley had.
Did Sturges have a close relationship with his mother?
I think, well, yes, because she divorced his father.
I thought that she left, though, no?
I think he went with her.
Oh, he went with her?
To Paris.
Okay.
I think he went with her, yeah.
Okay. You would know better than I.
Not necessarily.
I literally just Googled it after you shared that last night.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he lived with... They moved to Paris, and he moved with her, and then they moved back to the States, where she married, like, her third husband whose name was Sturges. That's where he gets the family name from. But, yeah, he hates women. Or hated.
Okay.
Preston Sturges. I am not nearly as much of a misogynist as Preston Sturges. I had just finished watching, like, 4 of his films in a row the last couple days. Yeah, he hates women.
Show your work.
Oh my god! So, do you know any of his films? The Lady Eve, Mirrorfoot Morgan's Creek, the Great. I haven't seen The Great McGinty, but so all of his films tend to feature a very manipulative woman.
Okay.
Cold-hearted, really, very intelligent.
A succubus type.
A succubus type, and then an idiot man who falls for her, and then gets manipulated by her, and then ends up with her again.
I see.
Through her own devices. And you watch, after like 3 or 4 of these films in a row, I said, oh my god, this guy really thinks women are bitches.
Intuiting mother issues, maybe?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. And then you find out this guy was married 4 times.
Okay, yeah, that's a bad track record.
And then you think, and the only reason why he didn't divorce the 4th one was because he died before he got the chance.
Okay.
And then you find out, and this was the most interesting bit of information.
I think it's
in his, he was writing a memoir before he died called, ironically enough, The Events Leading Up to My Death.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then he got a heart attack
for a memoir.
Yeah, and then it was supposed to be funny, and I think a couple decades later it was released under a different title, which is bullshit. But in there he describes how basically him getting into screenwriting was a lark.
Okay.
Because he basically went on a date with this girl, whom he thought she thought I was really funny, and she really liked me, and all this stuff. But then at the end of the day, she tells him how basically she wasn't into him at all. She found him fascinating for a character she was writing in a play.
Okay.
And then he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, this bitch, if she thinks that if I'm just like a clown or I amuse her, I'll get back at her. I'm going to write my own play, and it's going to be way better than hers.
I'll show you a thing or two about writing.
And then he did it. And then that's how his screenwriting career started. His screenwriting career started out of spite towards a woman. This is the most amazing thing I've ever read. I thought, this man really hated women.
That's a good way to get into a career,
I guess.
Good motivation.
I found that fascinating.
That's interesting.
I found that fascinating only because I don't feel like there's a... obviously there's some old Hollywood directors who are accused of who are a bit old-fashioned and misogynistic, and then there are others who are considered surprisingly feminist.
Right.
And I look at Preston Sturges and I think, is no one seeing what I'm seeing with this guy? Because I would know.
That there's a blatant disdain.
I know it when I see it, and I'm seeing like, nope, if this man is if it's a spade, it's a spade, and this man he's got stripes all over. It's I don't know. It's a weird thing. When we talk about film directors who are maybe passé,
it's nothing personal.
But also, he was never that big of a success. So that's probably why people don't talk about him that much.
What's the point of taking down a small man?
Yeah, some guy who had like a couple of hits.
Yeah,
he's no Howard Hawks.
That's right.
He's no Hitchcock. It's easy to kind of look at Hitchcock and say, "Oh, this guy hated women."
Got to tear down the big guy.
Yeah. But Preston, no, that guy. This guy got some women problems.
Interesting.
It fascinates me too.
Where did you come across this discovery? Like, did you just...
I just watched his movies.
I see.
I was watching, because on Criterion...
Like, what made you look up his mother?
I was just reading about his life, and his mother comes up, because she's quite important.
Sure. Yeah, fair.
And,
oh my god, that shot.
Yeah, don't you watch this and go like, oh, Godard made movies?
Yeah, this deserves the CinemaScope.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, of course.
It is funny in metatextual also that, like, at the beginning, Fritz Lang is talking about how much he likes the look of the CinemaScope. You're like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. How many ass shots can we have of Brigitte Bardot in this movie?
This one feels like it only half counts, though.
Yeah, it's very tasteful. It's tongue-in-cheek, we could say.
Although I question the practicality of that.
Yeah, how did it get there? Does the term tongue-in-cheek refer to analingus?
I really don't think
so. Oh, no. You know what it is? It's
yeah.
That's tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. It's interesting that your mind went to the other cheek first.
Because, modern society has corrupted our brains.
Sure. I can see where you got there, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Nothing's funnier than analingus. When you think about it, there's nothing funny about cunnilingus. Because for a lot of women, it's like, well, are you going to do it or not? And for a lot of guys, it's like, oh, do I have to? Or some guys are like, yeah, I really like it. And they're kind of weird. but analingus is like, oh, it's funny. You're eating someone's asshole. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
You're eating out the poop hole.
You sure are.
That's funny.
And, like, there's no definable pleasure center.
Yeah, especially as far as a man performing it on a woman.
Right. Exactly.
Who is this for?
Exactly. What is the benefit here?
Yeah.
Other than it's just bizarre enough to be kinky.
And yet it's got a following.
It's got a follow. It's a hit. It's a hit in the right groups.
You ever heard the term "sucking out a woman's fart"?
Can't say that I have.
Now you have.
Introduce me.
Well, that's literally what analingus is.
I'm good.
So there you go.
I guess I was
Have you ever followed any gay porn stars on Twitter?
No.
You ever seen a gay porn star prolapse?
No.
Do you know what that is?
No.
I don't think you want to.
Okay.
I think it would actually disturb you if I showed you a video of this. It would make you very sick.
I'll have to weigh my comfort.
Yeah, it's the Pandora's box. You can just open it or not. I've now planted the seed in your brain.
Okay.
I'm going to drop it now, though.
Okay.
Yeah. I watched Brokeback Mountain for a second time.
Oh yeah, with your oomphs.
With my oomphs. That's something else we can't really get into at the moment. That's too complicated. No, actually it's not. I was on Twitter. I started talking with a group of people on Twitter, and then we all watched a movie simultaneously over Twitter.
Yeah, over Twitter?
Well, we were all on Twitter in a space, which is much like what we're doing now, except live. Except live. It's this, but live.
Is this not live?
No. Well, live is in other people on the other end who can listen to it and also talk.
Oh, I see.
If we were doing this in real time...
Did you talk about the movie while you were
That's the funny thing is we were all dead silent.
Interesting.
while we were all watching this movie
together,
at the same time, and then
so to speak.
and constantly tweeting about it too. And these are the kind of tweets that anyone who's not in the space has no idea what the fuck the context is. But we all knew. We all knew. There was like 6 of us, and we were just watching Brokeback Mountain, and then then it was over, and we were all still stuck. Because how do you talk after that movie?
We found it moving.
It's a great movie.
It is a great movie.
It's one of the great romances. In fact, it's the second greatest romance I've ever seen put to film.
Number 1 spot is reserved for.
Can you not guess?
No, I can't.
Bridges of Madison County.
Oh, really? I didn't know you liked that movie.
You didn't know that I liked the Clint Eastwood movie?
Well, I can presume. I didn't know that held such a revered place as a romance.
Oh my God. Isaac. Have you not seen that movie?
I've never seen that movie.
Oh, watch it with your wife.
Okay.
Yeah. She will put out like crazy.
I'll save it
I'd
for
be shocked if she didn't.
I'll save it for a melt in the arms kind of night.
Oh, it's a weeper. You're
Right.
gonna cry with that one. You more maybe than her.
Well, that's likely. That I tend to be the movie crier.
Really? She doesn't cry very much?
No.
That one might bring her to tears.
All right.
It might or may not. It depends on how much she buys Meryl Streep having the hots for Clint Eastwood.
Is that hard to buy?
Not necessarily, but I think I watched this as one girl.
How old is Clint Eastwood this year? What year?
Well, that's the thing. This was 1994. I want to say 1995.
Acceptable.
So he's in his 60s.
Still a young man.
Yeah, he's like 65. And Meryl Streep's probably in her 40s at this point. So there is a little bit of an age gap.
Sure.
But I mean, for me as a guy, I see Clint Eastwood, and I think this is just a man.
Right.
But I was watching it with some girl. This is a different girl. We were also post coitus, and we were watching this movie, and she noticed the age difference.
She said, "Look at this ancient lech."
It did bother her a little bit, and I was shocked by that. And then at that point, I realized there's this relationship is going on.
There's no future here.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of those things. It's like someone saying they don't like Hall & Oates. You know, it's like, that's like, come on.
Deal breaker.
This is like such a... And not even basic. It's one of the greatest films I've ever seen in my life.
All right.
It's so beautiful.
I'll put it on the list.
Tommy is probably crying listening to this right now, thinking of that movie. When he's in the rain, the scene where Clint Eastwood is in the rain, and then he's in the car. He puts the necklace over the rear view in the car, and she sees it.
This means nothing to me at this point.
What a picture.
But I'm sure
What a picture.
when I listen back.
And then she has her hand on the door.
Okay.
And you think, is she going to get out of the car or not? What is she going to do? I'm getting emotional right now thinking about it. It's a very moving film.
I wish I was there with you.
It's a heartbreaker.
All right.
What are the movies that have made me cry the most in my life? You say yours first.
I'm going through a very difficult, or not difficult is the wrong word. I'm going through a very confusing phase, actually, where I'm becoming exceptionally emotional at almost everything
Me too.
I watch.
That's happening to me too.
And I don't know
Hashtag me too.
why. Hashtag me too. I rewatched Treasure Planet the other night. And when that Goo Goo Dolls montage came on, I wept openly.
Because he does not have
violently.
a father figure.
It was brutal.
Blackbeard is his father figure.
Spencer.
No,
was
Long
sitting-
John Silver, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I knew who you meant. Spencer was sitting and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was violently shaking.
I was not.
It was not good.
I understand exactly what you mean. I got emotional watching Megan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was not expecting that. I thought,
When
what
she-
the
when she
hell
said,
is coming?
Am I going to die? I was like, caught me right in the chest.
Yeah, it really did. That. This movie's almost over. We're getting to one of the final. So she's left her husband for Jack Palance, the American movie producer.
Okay. Bitch.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Well, that's something we can. One of the arguments we made against Godard necessarily is maybe his presentation of women. One could say that, especially in the later ones, they just tend to be just random scenes where women either have really short pants or are just naked.
Kind of fickle.
Yeah, he just likes them naked. Doesn't seem. I mean, obviously, Godard could say there's a reason for it, of course.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, you couldn't convince me of
Justify
anything.
whatever you want.
But at the same time, I am just seeing a lot of bare asses here.
So he's an ass man.
Maybe like Tinto.
Because I did see that the only real visualization of breasts in this film is when the guy is smacking the nipples of the statue.
Of the statue. Yeah, he doesn't seem to. He doesn't the tits.
Doesn't care for it.
Doesn't love the tits.
Take him or leave him.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
We figured out Godard's kink.
Godard's an
He
ass
probably eats ass.
It all circles.
It
back.
all comes back to that.
There's a lot of red in this shot.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, he makes a point in the first scene where they're in the bedroom together. He goes because it's Technicolor, and so he goes through each color strip. It's tinted blue, and then it's tinted yellow, and then it's tinted red. It's quite good, but yeah, Bridges of Madison County, Hook makes me cry like a baby.
Hook got me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Most Spielberg and most Eastwood make me cry.
Yeah.
Porco Rosso. Oh.
Anything recent, particularly for anything recently with like a father relationship.
Yes.
And I'm like,
absolutely.
I have a fine relationship with my father.
Me too.
So I don't know why it's
but
cutting
for
so
some
deep,
reason it does.
It is ripping into me right now. Oh wow, what a twist!
It's not really a twist. It's an unexpected turn of events.
Is that not what a twist is?
No, a twist is more something that...
Sure. It needs to have been planted.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is just a thing that happened. They're dead now.
Yeah, that was sudden.
Yeah, it was. Porco Rosso, that's... Okay, so the next episode we do of this, which honestly we could do it right now. Why the fuck not?
Back-to-back.
Back-to-back episodes.
I don't have back-to-back episodes in me from
Yes, you do. I can see it in your eyes.
Don't.
But we'll do Porco Rosso next time. Because I watched that movie like 5 times last year.
Jesus, okay, it's a day.
And each time I realized this is his best film.
And who's
Miyazaki?
That's a Miyazaki film?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not even close.
Okay.
This is like one of the only 2 films of his worth watching. All the other ones are like mediocre. They're shit.
We'll do Porco Rosso next.
Yeah. And then we'll discuss why this Japanese man really should have been a pilot.
Okay.
And not a filmmaker.
That's an interesting...
Because that's clearly where his real love was. I don't even know...
Is it a film about aviation?
Porco Rosso is a film about a man-pig who loves to fly.
Fascinating.
And he's an Italian in the 20s, and he's outrunning the fascists and the seaplane pirates. Because in this world, everyone has a seaplane.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there.
And so there are seaplane pirates.
Okay.
Who steal from ships.
Steal other seaplanes?
They steal from ships. They're pirates who steal from ships, but they fly away in their seaplanes.
I see.
And Porco Rosso was a bounty hunter, as a mercenary seaplane pilot, who goes after the seaplane pirates. It is an exceptional film.
All right.
It's exceptional filmmaking.
You've queued me up, man.
Yeah. I'm very... Whew. That movie gets me emotional, too. I cry a little bit every time I watch it, but for different reasons. We're in the final scene of this film, I think. It's almost over. The thing about Godard films is that since he tends to put his credits at the beginning, they end very abruptly. So that's why we won't really have a chance.
Right, there's no wrap-up time. It's
yeah, we have like
over and then it's over.
Yeah, I think we have like maybe a couple minutes left.
Okay.
So we should be winding down. It's a hard thing to do when you don't know exactly.
You want to time it just right.
Yeah. See, this is like a 142. It doesn't make it to 144. 143, 27. We have a minute left.
All right. How do we want to vamp on
this is tense.
Okay. So that's an interesting way to close it out.
Yeah. This is the Odysseus out staring out against the sea, I think.
Yeah. Interesting Technicolor branding.
Yeah.
It is funny how he kind of is acknowledging his own technological choices in the metatextual film. Oh, and sure, we end on the blank, vast void of the sea. Well,
just like every single time we've said it the last few years, I'm going to try to make more of these.
Oh, yeah.
Over time. But until the next time...
This is the new launch.
This has been Fabricio and Isaac for background noise. Wait, don't stop yet. God damn it.
I've just got my finger on it. But I see the fiend. I'm ready to go.
This has been wonderful, Isaac.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're doing it again. We'll see how we fare at our progression.